feel guarded.
Judgment.
It's fear of rejection.
I pause when I'm about to encounter someone new.
Hello, this is Joe, my roommate.
Airport security, going through customs.
With my coworkers, clients.
I feel like I have to not touch her, like in the grocery store.
It's nonstop.
It changes how I navigate the world sometimes, but I can't change who I am.
Makes me feel resentful. They miss out on me at the end of the day.
That's the worst part.
I would love to have that moment where I don't have to pause.
This is Joe. This is my partner of 37 years.
Flight. Openness.
Maybe we could just be ourselves.
I could just show up as my true self without having to explain who I am.
For decades, P&G has outwardly supported the LGBTQ community through events, programs, and sponsorships. And more recently, we have increasingly included the community in mainstream and LGBTQ-specific brand building. With a massive cultural shift underway, the impact of the LGBTQ consumer has never been more important, yet it's an audience as brand builders that we understand very little about. It's fair to say that brands are more likely to be inclusive when it comes to age, race, and gender, but are hesitant to be as inclusive when it comes to sexual orientation and gender identity. Even as brands are willing to sponsor Pride events and change their social media logos during Pride Month, LGBTQ people are hard-pressed to feel authentically and accurately represented consistently. The number of individuals identifying as LGBTQ is on the rise, which isn't surprising given the increase in gay and transgender rights in many of our cultures. According to GLAAD, about 30% of Americans between the ages of 18 to 34 identify as LGBTQ, compared with about 8% of those 72 and older. While measuring the size of the market globally is challenging because of the vast differences in cultural norms, religious beliefs, and legal restrictions, it is clear that each generation has an increasingly larger LGBTQ population. For years, we have been on a journey to better understand our own history with LGBTQ employees and to implement change within the company that impacts our communities as well. We've told important stories and used our experience to create dialogue that promoted better understanding within P&G, while also sparking conversation about how companies can better serve the LGBTQ consumer. It started with an honest look at our past with a documentary film we called The Words Matter, followed by Out of the Shadows, and then They Will See You. And we've created an annual fundraising effort called Can't Cancel Pride to celebrate, support, and promote visibility of the LGBTQ community. We're now building on this momentum to bring even more visibility to the LGBT community in a new film, Coded, a story of J.C. Leyendecker, one of the most prominent artists of his time, but whose story is largely forgotten. Forced to keep his sexuality a secret, his coded imagery spoke directly to the gay community and lay the foundation for LGBTQ representation in advertising today. The documentary explores Leyendecker's legacy as a grandfather of modern advertising, connecting how today's advertising is inspired by the foundation built from his work. P&G is committed to step up and use our voice as a voice for good, and that voice has never been needed more than today to drive visibility for issues facing the LGBTQ community. And importantly, doing the work necessary to build this in as a systematic part of brand building, not a one-off Pride event, to have a sustained cultural impact. I have 3 guests with me today who are committed to and partnering with P&G to drive this forward. We're grateful for their insight. Sarah Kate Ellis is the president and CEO of GLAAD and a global leader in LGBTQ representation in media. Ryan White is an award-winning film producer and director, including the new documentary Coded. And Jari Jones is an LGBTQ activist, producer, and model who has shifted the paradigm on transgender representation in her recent Calvin Klein campaigns.
All of you know that what people see in ads in the media has a huge impact in shaping the decisions made in offices and living rooms, courtrooms, and classrooms all over. This is even more true when it comes to LGBTQ people. Our community needs content creators to educate the general public. But when it comes to LGBTQ inclusion in advertising, the industry is in the same place Hollywood was about 20 years ago. Raising visibility in advertising is not just a good thing to do or the right thing to do. It really is a business imperative because our community and our allies are growing. Gallup found 1 in 6 members of Gen Z are LGBT. So last year, GLAAD and P&G released first of its kind research that showed LGBTQ inclusion in ads and marketing drives acceptance and understanding of the community, and in fact provides a halo for the brand, meaning consumers think highly of the company and are more likely to purchase from them. This year, GLAAD and P&G partnered on another landmark study where we spoke directly with advertisers and agencies. When we talk to advertisers, there is a real fear in advancing LGBTQ representation. Surprisingly, public backlash about LGBTQ content isn't a big concern. The concern today is if LGBTQ representation will be received as authentic. Over half of ad executives who were surveyed say it is difficult to adequately represent LGBTQ people in ads because of the nuances and complexities of the community. But leading advertisers like P&G are doing it and doing it successfully. To help agencies and brands approach LGBTQ people in ads right, GLAAD and P&G have launched the Visibility Project. This project is aimed at working with industry leaders to advance LGBTQ inclusion and seize the opportunity to not only market to a community, but to join a movement. Please join us. Together with all of you, we have the power and the responsibility to set a new path forward for LGBTQ inclusion in ads. Now is the time.
I grew up in Georgia in the 80s and 90s, and so it certainly wasn't a time when LGBTQ history was being taught in schools. I don't know if it is today, but definitely when I was growing up as a gay young person, there was no sense of the people that came before us, no sense of the movement that was never taught to us. And so I think, like many queer people, I had to seek out that information later in life. And I think in a lot of ways, that's probably why I became a documentary filmmaker, was to be a part of telling those stories. And so when I found out about J.C. Leyendecker, I'm ashamed to say I had never heard of him. And I think that's sort of the tragedy of so many queer stories and queer heroes and forefathers and foremothers, that their stories have been lost to history. And so I was actually quite surprised to even find out about this era of LGBTQ history in the 1910s and 20s, when there was a lot of progress. And so when the story sort of fell in our lap, I thought it was an opportunity to not only tell a legacy story of a man who's been forgotten to history, but also as a reminder of the importance of visibility and representation, because as we explore in the film, J.C. Leyendecker's work was including LGBTQ representation. It was just doing it in an era in which that had to be very coded. And so as we continue to evolve through history, I think the hope is that that coding of queer people in advertising and media and entertainment can become more and more uncoded.
People talk about queerness as if it's something new, right? But we've always been here. Going back into our history, queerness was so criminalized. We had to keep a low profile and use coded language to express ourselves safely. And we've seen it within art and advertising, like in the imagery of this gay artist, J.C. Leyendecker, who was working in the early 1900s. He was able to thread in queerness in an era when it's not accepted. but he was kind of erased from history.
His story also is somewhat of a cautionary tale, that he was, in his heyday, one of the most famous and wealthy people in the world and living an out life. And because of various phases of history, had that all ripped away. And so I hope that this film, in a lot of ways, is a reminder that no matter how much progress we achieve, that could be taken away at any moment.
Hi, my name is Jari Jones. I am a Black trans plus-size model, actress, and activist. My work centers around the uplifting and the empowering of Black and Brown queer bodies. As a young person, I did not see representation of myself, at least not in a positive light. I wanted to see possibility models. I wanted to see what my future was going to look like. And that was not put on TV or in books or in media in general. And I was hungry for it. As a queer person, we're always looking for identities to attach to better understand ourselves. So because I did not see that, I decided that I wanted to be that representation. And I went on my journey of visibility. I started in theater, moved into fashion and modeling, and then into TV and film. I believe, within that span of time, it was really the catalyst of my visibility that not only empowered me and, met my wildest dreams, but also it opened the door for so many people like me to live out their wildest dreams as well. Now in media, we see fat people being represented and trans people being represented and Black people represented from all different kinds of walks of life. And I only want to expand that more. I don't want to be the only representation that's out there, And with visibility, it brings up a community. It uplifts and empowers a community, whether people are out or showcasing that identity or not, I think we live in a society where it is good for some people and not so much for other people. But I want my invisibility to still be able to reach those folks and empower them, whether or not they decide to walk publicly in that light. That is why visibility and representation is key to uplifting marginalized communities.
Thank you to Sarah, Kate, Ryan, and Jari for your insight and perspective. Please join us as we bring greater understanding and visibility for the LGBT community. We encourage you to reach out to GLAAD to find out more about the Visibility Project, and together we can bring more light and love for all humanity to the world.